Welcome to the Self-Insurance Podcast brought to you by CRMBC. Every week, we're interviewing industry experts, restaurant operators, and brokers to talk about the world of workers' comp self-insurance in California. It is my great honor to welcome today Gene Immendorf. He's the president of Immendorf Investigations. Gene, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, it's an honor to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So as a private investigator, your father started this firm and then you joined it. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into this?
My background was when I was in high school, I thought it sounded really cool to be a private investigator. So I started doing surveillance at 17 and realized it was a very difficult job that involved getting up really early, a lot of driving, a lot of hours. So I tried to avoid it for the rest of my life, and I've been doing it for almost 40 years now. My father, Jack Immendorf's a legend, so some people call me Jack's son, but you can call me Gene.
Yeah, I know that your dad actually has a show on Netflix or is on a show on Netflix right now.
My dad is currently on Netflix. If you watch the D.B. Cooper documentary, especially episodes 2 and 3, we just did a documentary together on the Oxygen channel. And with the same case, a murder case involved with the D.B. Cooper. But if you Google Jack Immendorf, you'll find a lot of television and a lot of documentaries and news. And we've been doing this for a long time, and it's a lot of fun, you know?
So you do all kinds of private investigation. The murder stuff is probably sexier than the workers' comp stuff.
You know, if you want to tell fun stories, it's fun to go down the criminal stuff. But our bread and butter and what we consider ourselves experts in is workers' comp sub rosa. That's what I've been doing my entire life. That's what I know. And that's what we concentrate on, 99.9% of the time.
And you've been working with CRMBC in the past and
I have.
Yeah. And so, the differences between a workers' comp self-insured group where our members, we're a nonprofit, and we really look out for our members, unlike a traditional carrier who often might just pay out a claim and is not going to go down the road of defending a claim to the extent that we will. So we really depend heavily on private investigators like you and sub rosa. For our listeners who don't understand what sub rosa means, can you give us a high-level explanation and description of that?
Yeah, sub rosa in general means the sign of the rose, to be quiet and not seen. It's also been referred to as an activities check, a surveillance. But sub rosa is basically, how we determine what an individual is doing, throughout the course of several days or weeks to get an idea if they're exaggerating their complaints, if their activities are inconsistent with what they're telling the employer. And it's a way of observing somebody and gathering evidence and video and determining exactly what an individual is doing during the course of several days or weeks and comparing that to what they're telling the employer or the doctors. And it can get a lot more involved than that, but basically it's surveillance, sub rosa activities checks, and understanding what the activities are of an individual.
And like you said, you've been doing this for almost 40 years. So you know all of the ins and outs and ups and downs about this.
I do.
What are some efficiencies? What are the most efficient ways that you've found to do this surveillance?
Okay. Well, that could be a long answer, but I'll try to make it short. There's a lot of differences that have happened over the course of the last, say, 20 years where people get confused with an activities check versus a sub rosa. So some people will tell you to do 4 hours and break off. We won't do that. We feel the best way to perform a surveillance is doing at least 1 8-hour day, if not 2 or 3 days, to get a full account of what the individual is doing. And one of the most frustrating things for us is when someone will tell us, hey, we only want to do 4 hours. And we want to say, well, what 4 hours do you want to do? Because you can't really do a sub rosa and you can't really find out what an individual is doing unless you put the time in and you have the right investigator out there to do it.
That makes sense. And I mean, technology has changed a lot over the last 40 years. I mean, so how has the changes in technology changed what you do?
Well, when I started, there was a Bolex 60 millimeter camera that we had to pull the flap off the back, load the film in, wind it, put a big lens on there, focus it ourselves, f-stop it ourselves, to take the film and have it be developed and showed on a Bell & Howell projector. Then you went to the VHS. So now you have a big camera with a power pack and a big tape recorder, so you look like you're a newsman. Then you go to the 8 millimeter camera, which was pretty good. Now we have camcorders that fit right in your hand, and you can't even see the camera. And the focal length is amazing. You can shoot 2 blocks, 3 blocks away and zoom right in on someone from your hand. And the other part of technology that's changed a lot is when the concealed cameras first came out. That was a really exciting, adventure for us because we had never been able to get inside gyms and supermarkets and restaurants and in stores with a camera. So we used to put them inside our hat, our tie, carry around a coffee cup with a camera in it. And it was an innovation that really, enabled the investigator to get a lot more film inside a residence or when you're not outside in a public place. Now with the iPhone, it's almost, you can use the iPhone as a concealed camera. So the technology keeps getting better and better. As you can tell with when my kids were using a razor, it was texting, now I can't get them off the phone. The one thing that I'm noticing in the industry though, that I question is there's a lot of unmanned cameras being used. And I think they're real efficient for specific things when someone's leaving or coming or going. But, I always feel with all the technology that we have that is available to the investigator, it's the actual investigator that's going to make the decision, whether it's a successful investigation or not, and when to use the camera and the technology that he has available to him. So that's the shortest answer I could give you.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And you're right. I mean, now people are walking through the grocery store and they could be just talking, but they don't realize that you're recording. That completely must change your industry.
It enables us, like, for example, if someone is saying they need a cane and they go into Costco and they hook the cane up on their shopping cart and now they're walking around through Costco and they're picking stuff up and putting them in the cart and walking around, we're able to get that video. Whereas, 10 years ago, that would have been a much more difficult situation. So yeah. And it's great. If someone's working inside, we're able to get inside and get video of them working without them knowing it. And it does enable the investigator to obtain video that we weren't able to obtain in the past. But again, it's up to the investigator who has the camera to get those results.
At what point in a claim do you get involved? And are you called by the TPA? Are you called by the defense attorney? Where do you get involved in the life cycle of the claim?
That's, again, a loaded question. There's usually a red flag in a file, or a rumor that someone said to someone that they're doing this, or, the claimant has been out of the office or out of employment for way too long based on doctor's reports. It's usually a red flag that indicates we should take a look at this person and see if this is consistent with what they're saying. The one thing that I do miss is the verbal communication I used to be able to have with the employer and the adjusters and the attorneys. The information you get from a 5-minute phone call, is a lot more than you would get, and is how it kind of works today, is in emails and in, everything's in the email or written format, and which is fine. But, the subjective complaints, the restrictions, the address. But, sometimes I'll actually talk to the adjuster or the employer and I'll hear so much more information. And those are the things that, I would like to see happen more, that the industry's kind of gone to nonverbal and everything in writing. But I think the verbal communication enables us to understand why they're looking at an individual. We get a better feel for it. But usually there's a red flag. And that's when the investigator gets called in to see if the complaints with the individual are consistent with, what's going on in the claim.
What are some of the red flags?
Way too many subjective complaints without a whole lot of objective findings. They've been off work for 8 or 9 months. They return to modified duty, but they can't do it for more than 4 hours. They go off again. They're going into doctor's offices with a cane, and there's no use of rubber on the cane, and the doctor's noticing that the cane hasn't been used. We hear a lot of, there's a lot of people working on the side under the table. If you're in construction or, a laboring type employment, a lot of times we go out there and they're working on the side under the table. So we can go, like I said, there's normally several red flags that determine, hey, we need to take a look at this individual.
What's one of the most overlooked parts of a productive sub rosa investigation?
I would say the most overlooked part is what we do before we actually do the surveillance. When we do a background investigation and we have time to do it, we'll be able to find, through our civil and databases that, we're able to to use because we have a license. We're able to find out criminal and civil litigation, social media, vehicles, descriptions. We can satellite the house. We can prelim the residence. All the things that we do before we actually do the sub rosa are, completely overlooked. And, we can find out registered vehicles, where they park the vehicles. And it enables us to do a lot more than we get a lot of rush cases. Like I got one today that we're going to be working tomorrow. I'm not going to have that opportunity. So we're going to go out there kind of blind and have to figure it out while we're there. So one of the most overlooked things, in my opinion, is, what you do before you go out there to give that investigator the best opportunity to be successful with all the information we can gather through what we can do in the office.
That's interesting. And you already just mentioned that just getting on a phone call with you would give you so much more information that would help you. Are there other things that the carrier or the member could be doing to support you besides the phone call?
Well, the more information we get, obviously the better prepared we're going to be to get the results that the employer is looking for. And it is frustrating when you got to remember, surveillance is not like any other job. And I can't even tell you how difficult it is out there in some of these neighborhoods and what the investigator has to go through, just to make ID and follow the right person and when to pick up the camera and when to film. And there's so many elements that go into a successful surveillance that the verbal communication again is like, I'll email back a client, but I can't put in the email what I really want to say because there might have been something that happened out there that you just don't want to put in writing, but you want to tell the employer or the adjuster or the attorney, hey, there's gang members and there's this going on and this is drugs being dealt. And, those are the types of things we don't really want to put in an email. And a lot of times, I'll kind of supplement that a little bit into an email and say, can you give me a call? And I get an email back that we got your voicemail. Thanks, Gene. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. But sometimes I'll actually get a phone call and talk to them. And in 5 minutes, I'm hearing so much information that I didn't know. He went to this doctor and he told this person that thing and she did this and she said she was working over here. But I'm like, well, where was all that on the assignment? So there's so many things that happen during the course of the case with the adjuster, the attorney, the employer that we don't know about because we've gotten an assignment in writing and we've never had an opportunity to talk to anybody.
That's interesting. What's the reason why you have to be careful about what you put in writing if you saw drugs or something?
Well, in the report, we will word it so that you guys can use it. And it just, if you see kids with drugs in a house and it's the claimant's house, you have to be real careful. If you see gang activity, if, someone smashing your car, there's just elements, you just got to be careful how you word it. And, when I put things in writing, I want to make sure that you guys can use it,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes there's difficulties we have out there. And I'd rather talk to someone on the phone about it and give them an idea of what we're dealing with than put it all in writing. It's quicker. It's more efficient. You get more information. And it's just something that we've kind of lost since COVID. With everybody working remote, we seem to have a lot less verbal communication and more writing communication. And, because of that, there's a lack of information that's provided to the investigator that in a phone call would be a lot quicker, but, we do the best we can.
You mentioned there's a lot of difficulties in the field, and you mentioned a couple of them already. Give us a couple that just shocked the heck out of you.
I would say we had one case recently where it was a sheriff, and we had to follow her, and she was 100%. And she couldn't do anything. And we thought we had the wrong person because she was in a gym working out in bodybuilding. And yeah, and and then she moved to another state and we went there and she refused to come back for an appointment. So they set up an appointment where she was living at a coffee shop. And when she showed up, we couldn't believe it was her. It's like we have the wrong person. There's no way. Her hair was completely looked like it hadn't been washed in days. She was lying down in the back of the car. They had to pull her out into a wheelchair. And during the course of that appointment, she couldn't even write with her hand, lift up her hand to write with the pen. And my investigator's telling me, we must have the wrong person. This is not the same person. And 2 hours later, she went to the gym.
Wow.
So we ended up trying that case and she was found guilty of fraud and she pleaded guilty. So
Wow.
that was kind of a shocker. But there's lots of things that happen that we don't want to see, like affairs. Nobody wants to see someone cheating. That's not the cases. I don't work those cases, by the way. But,
Mhm.
a lot of times, you're following somebody and you get involved in their personal life,
Right.
and it's kind of, it's a double-edged sword, how you want to report that. We see guns. I've seen a guy go into a Jack in the Box and I'm filming him. And it's like, okay, well, he looks okay. He's getting a hamburger. He's getting in his car. Then another car pulls up next to him. Then they crawl into the car and they're pulling out rifles,
Oh my.
and we got gun dealers. So these stories go on and on. It's you never know what you're going to find. It's like every day is a different day. It's a box of chocolates every day, Yeah.
Gosh. Well, Jean, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And what the purpose of this podcast is to give our members and brokers the insight into all of these different aspects of what we do. And so it's really helpful to hear from your perspective what we can be doing to make you more successful to help the member. So thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to meeting your dad next time. But thank you.
They also call me Jack's son, so you can call me Jackson. But thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure. And have a great day, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Self-Insurance Podcast brought to you by CRMBC. If there's a topic you'd like to learn more about, or if you have any questions, just email us at info@crmbc.com. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share, and join us again next week for more tips on self-insurance.